Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And you know, one pretty persistent debate out there that I always find to just be absolutely ridiculous is the bottom of the barrel Xbox Game Pass comments. You know the concern trolling for Xbox Game Pass being nothing but fodder. Is it sustainable, and is it actually good for game developers? It's these questions here, this concern trolling, that is just so absurd to me, because we've seen success from them time and time again. And for those that choose to subscribe, because yes, it is an option, those fans, well, they do seem to absolutely love it. It really is just another option. If you don't like it, just don't subscribe. But, let's go back to those developers again, because it does have some pretty big supporters for a multitude of reasons. And you can now add Obsidian Entertainment to that list, because Josh Sawyer had a pretty glowing response on how it's benefited them as creators. So we're going to talk all about that a little later on today, as well as a hush-hush secret PlayStation game that might be coming sooner than expected. Yeah, definitely some pretty exciting stuff there, so lots and lots to go over today. Per usual though, if you're new to the channel and if you like this type of content, just a little bit of a reminder of those buttons below. They're pretty magnificent, I have to say, so go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and yes, whack that bell as hard as you possibly can. Let's just go and jump right into things, though, starting off with the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition, once again, because why not? There's always something happening with this buyout. But actually, this is a little bit of a change of pace here, because according to Xbox Phil Spencer, the main reason that they're trying to buy them out is not solely because of Call of Duty and all of their AAA studios. Instead, and this might actually come as a surprise to some people, but he claims that Microsoft is looking at King and their mobile division as a big driving force behind the nearly $70 billion buyout. Now, this is not the first time that they've mentioned something like this, but as we've gotten more information, Microsoft's desire to enter the mobile game market has become more evident over time, and that was made clear here in an interview with the Decoder podcast, where he said this: in terms of the Activision opportunity, and I keep saying this over and over, and it's true, it definitely starts with a view that people want to play games on every device that they have, and in a funny way, the smallest screen that we play on is actually the biggest screen when you think about the installed base in phone. That's just a place where if we don't gain relevancy as a gaming brand, we're not alone in seeing this. Over time, the business will become kind of untenable for any of us. If we're not able to find customers on phones, on any screen that someone wants to play on, you really are going to get segmented to a niche part of gaming that running a global business will become very challenging. Now, he continues on to talk about how the mobile market is growing, whereas console gaming is relatively the same each generation in terms of a user base, and that companies like Tencent are really capitalizing on that by purchasing a lot of studios at a very rapid pace. So he was then asked if this buyout was actually more about Candy Crush than Call of Duty, and this here was his response: absolutely. And in addition, the number that's not in the Candy Crush King number is Call of Duty Mobile and Diablo Mobile, which are big franchises that exist in the Activision bucket and in the Blizzard bucket that are also major players on phones. If you look at the totality of what Activision Blizzard King does, where their customers come from, where they make money, it's the same reason that Take-Two looked at Zynga and said, we've got to build our mobile capability. I'd say Activision Blizzard King did a better job of doing that earlier, definitely better than we did, and they're now in a position where they've got great PC franchises, great console franchises, and great mobile. For us, the real differentiation that they add to us is their mobile capability. So, I mean, there it is. That mobile division and their expertise there is actually a big part of this Activision Blizzard buyout. Now, I'm sure other things play a major role as well, such as more content for something like Xbox Game Pass. But Microsoft does seem to have some real desire into getting into that mobile market. It was actually spotted earlier this year that they're planning on a Xbox mobile game store, which that could actually end up being very interesting. They could tie all of their Xbox stuff together in one place for just absolute maximum exposure to that mainstream market. Having something like Candy Crush, Call of Duty, Diablo, other mobile games that they make. I mean, they could make a Halo mobile game, something Gears of War related. They did actually do Gears Pump before, and then also have all their cloud content and Xbox Game Pass in one single store. That could actually be very interesting, again, to really expose all this to that mass market. Now, I know most of us don't really care about mobile games ourselves. I'm not really into it myself, but this is something that we are starting to see more of. Nintendo, they make mobile games. They pointed out Take-Two, they're jumping into that with that big Zynga purchase. Also, Sony, they're preparing for a bigger push as well, and it does sound like Xbox is doing the same. So over the next few years, don't be surprised if we start to see more mobile games come from Xbox in addition to their already well-established AAA style of games. Now, we do also have another update for Sonic Frontiers. Actually, there's a few different things happening here, so we'll just go over each one by one. And that starts with it breaking a new record for the franchise. You know, obviously, this was a big shift for Sonic, opting out in a more open-world experience, and it so far seems like it has paid off, or at least that's how it appears, because Frontiers has reached a new peak high of 19,000 concurrent players on Steam. Now, that might not necessarily sound ginormous, but this is a significant jump compared to their previous high, which was for Sonic Mania, that topped out at 11,987 concurrent players. So that is a good sign going forward that they've gotten off to at least a better start than their previous entries. Now, the more interesting update here, though, comes in the way of what's going to happen to Sonic going forward. Are they going to stick with this open world formula, or will they go back to that more linear design? Well, the Sonic Frontiers game director did say this: "We are checking out the opinions of the critics and players. As you have pointed out, there are still areas where we are not quite there yet, and we will take this seriously like a global playtest." Now, I don't know if the translation was absolutely perfect here, but the way this makes it sound is that they do intend to evolve this open world formula even more, whether that be with a sequel, an expansion, or maybe just a completely new game. But as he notes, there's still areas that they can improve in. Now, the obvious improvement that they need to make is the pop-in, because that is a glaring issue. I mean, the game is still fun, but improving that would go a long way. I do think that they're onto something here. Fans really, and I mean really, seem to be enjoying Sonic Frontiers over on Steam. It's got overwhelmingly positive reviews, and I mean, if you do like Sonic Frontiers, I'd say that these are relatively good signs going forward. Let's go and talk about this Xbox Game Pass situation, though, because, I mean, how many times have you heard something like, Game Pass isn't good for developers, it's got no games, they don't review well, how does developers make money on something like this? And I mean, you just hear this type of stuff get regurgitated over and over and over again. Well, we've seen several developers come out and talk about how it's actually helped their games succeed. Now, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all type of deal. Each developer will need to take a look at it to see if it best fits their own individual game, but Microsoft does pay them money to include it into their service, which that's already a big bonus there. And it also gives their games a lot of added exposure, which translates to not only success for Xbox, but also on other platforms. That word of mouth, as we've talked about countless times on this channel, is a major thing, especially for some of these smaller games. Then as for the quality of their games, there's the one that I just kind of roll my eyes at, because you don't even have to look very far to find out that that's not true at all. A Plague Tale Requiem, this game launched last month, and I mean, it is a Game of the Year contender. You have games like Tunic that released earlier this year. It's up for multiple awards. You have Immortality. Guess what? It's up for rewards as well. You have something like Persona 5 Royal. That game has like a 90+ overall score on Metacritic. And then you just have a host of well-received games like Ghost Song, you have Tinykin, and the list just kind of goes on and on and on. All of these games are releasing into Game Pass day one, and yeah, they've been received very well. I think if anything, if you like a wide variety of games, it's pretty easy to see the value and the quality content that you get on a pretty much monthly basis. But in terms of developers, outside of obvious financial situations, what else can Xbox Game Pass do for game developers? Well, that's actually that it offers them more creativity, and that's exactly what Josh Sawyer from Obsidian Entertainment mentioned. Josh Sawyer is the game director behind Pentiment, which released yesterday and has been received very well. It does have an 86 overall score on Metacritic, but the thing about this specific game is that it's a little bit more on niche side of things. This is not your big AAA blockbuster title that's going to sell millions upon millions of copies. It's going to be for a smaller market, and Obsidian Entertainment, they absolutely know that. In an interview with Waypoint Radio, Josh Sawyer said this. This was transcribed by Tiger over on Resetter, and it says, "I never would have proposed making Pentiment without Game Pass. Like, I literally just wouldn't have done it. I just don't think that it would have been possible. The old mentality of publishers and developers is generally focused on larger investments with higher return on investment. And that's not the point in this environment, in this ecosystem. Game Pass is the only way in which I conceive of Pentiment being viable. For my own sake, making a game so different, I've completely shifted my thinking for Pentiment. It is so unusual, so niche, it's for a small audience, and as long as that audience is into it, that's fine." And this is something that we have briefly talked about before. Something that Xbox Game Pass needs is content. And sometimes that comes in a way of a big blockbuster title like a Plague Tale Requiem. But in other situations, it might be a little bit more creative, maybe even a little bit more experimental. It allows these developers to truly do what they want to, because Xbox Game Pass does have 25+ million subscribers. And there absolutely will be people that try something out that maybe they wouldn't have tried otherwise. This is one of the exact things that I pointed out with the Activision Blizzard buyout. With Activision Blizzard under the Xbox umbrella, there is that possibility that could unlock their creative freedom. I mean, there's so many studios currently working on Call of Duty right now, practically every Activision studio for that matter, and that's at the detriment of other IP, at the detriment of creativity. But under the Xbox umbrella, under the Xbox Game Pass model, there is a chance that those studios could work on other IP. Games like Spyro 4, maybe another Crash Bandicoot game. There's also the chance of something like a new StarCraft game, as Phil Spencer mentioned, or just a completely new IP. The Game Pass model promotes that type of stuff because they're not just looking for one new game every year. Subscriptions are more about consistent content, and when you look at a studio like Obsidian Entertainment, that's exactly what they're displaying right now. They have those big games in development like Avowed and Outer Worlds 2. Those are going to be your massive, big AAA titles. But then they also have these smaller games like Grounded and Pentiment, both of which have been well received and have been greatly enjoyed by a lot of fans out there and are gaining traction on something like Xbox Game Pass. Again, that's a great thing for developers. So that discussion on why developers might want to push their content into Game Pass is partially because of something like this. It allows developers to both be creative and get that added exposure that they need. So yeah, Xbox Game Pass, I mean, in a lot of ways, it just makes things better. It's a great option for fans to have, but something that people do tend to ignore at times is that it's also a great option for developers. It's by no means the only option, but we have seen a lot of developers come out and talk about the success that they've had and what type of benefits it gives them. And I think Pentiment and what Josh Sawyer said here kind of shows one of those reasons. Now, it also sounds like a secret PlayStation game, or multiple games actually, are being teased from a studio that just released a Game of the Year contender, being, of course, the studio behind God of War Ragnarok, Sony Santa Monica. Yeah, your ears should already be perked up just from that alone, but what's happening here is that Cory Barlog, the director behind God of War 2018, in an interview mentioned that the studio currently, quote-unquote, is spread out on a lot of different things. So they do have some other projects that they're working on, which kind of begs the question here. What are they working on? Well, the thing about Sony Santa Monica is that they have published smaller games in the past, so we can't necessarily rule that out. They did publish Journey, and I believe they published Fat Princess as well. I really enjoyed that game. But what's really interesting here is that even though Cory Barlog doesn't get into specifics here, back in October he was asked on Twitter, how long does it take you from conception to start working on a game? In which he responded, a year or two, depends. My current thing has been many years. So he is being a little bit more open about it there, and his game apparently has actually been in development for quite a while now. I think some people forget that he actually did not direct God of War Ragnarok this time. Ragnarok instead was handled by Eric Williams, which, by the way, kudos to him, he did a great job. But Cory Barlog, I mean, he has been doing his own thing for apparently many years, as he says here. Now, we still have no idea what this game is, so not really much to go off right now, but the fact that you have a proven director like Cory Barlog working on a brand new unannounced project that's been in development for years, yeah, I'd say that that's pretty exciting stuff. This game might be closer than what we think. I don't know if it'll necessarily be ready next year, but maybe 2024, and if that is the case, that's pretty good output for Sony Santa Monica. At the very least, I wouldn't be surprised if we get another Sony Santa Monica game sooner rather than later. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, what do you think is the biggest snub for Game of the Year? This really is a discussion every single year. Not every game is going to make that list, and some fans will be left disappointed. So I wanted to see your all's thoughts on this. And as you can see here, Tunic actually was the one that won this one with 26% of the votes, but actually just closely after that, you have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge at 25%, then Bayonetta 3 at 19%, Pokemon Legends Arceus at 17%, and then 14% of you voted for other, where you all did comment below. We'll kind of get into that just here in a moment. But yeah, Tunic does come away as the winner, and I do agree with this. This definitely was a very close poll result, and actually all four of the games received a good percentage here. But yeah, I agree. Tunic was honestly an exceptional game. Also really like Pokemon Legends Arceus. I think that was like the big surprise game for me this year. I did go into that one a little hesitant, but I mean, I left extremely impressed. I'm very curious to see how Pokemon Scarlet and Violet compares to that in just a couple of days. I'm pretty excited for that game. Honestly though, I think all of these games are good games, but that's kind of the thing when it comes to nominees. Every year there's always going to be a couple of games that unfortunately just doesn't make the cut, and people will be disappointed by that. This year though, I thought it was a pretty good list overall. I pretty much agreed with most of them except for maybe Stray. That's the iffy one in my opinion. I mean, I think it's a good game. Seriously, don't get me wrong, I really do believe Stray is a good game, but I don't think that I ever looked at it as a Game of the Year contender. Whereas something like Tunic, that's the one I would have went with. I really think that Tunic is absolutely excellent. But then you also have games like Bayonetta 3. That was a big missed opportunity here. And then you just kind of looking through the comments, I mean, you have games like Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. That was a good one. Splatoon 3. Nintendo actually had a really good year. You had Triangle Strategy this year. I mean, there was a lot of, I think, pretty solid titles this year. But all in all, I think all of the nominees are good games. I mean, my still top two are easily going to be God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring. Those are the two big ones. Looking through the comments, though, there was a lot of different games that was mentioned. Starboy Viper mentioned both Dying Light 2 as well. Sifu, those were great games. I saw Grounded pop up. Sonic Frontiers, as we talked about earlier. Fans seem to be absolutely loving that game, and some of you all did mention that in the comments. Neon White, that was a highly praised independent game. That's another one of those indie darlings we were talking about. Vampire Hunters, that popped up. I mean, and that's just kind of the thing about this year. I feel like there wasn't just those consistent blockbuster hits. I mean, there was a lot of delays this year, but there was still a lot of really good games. And unfortunately, not every game can necessarily be nominated. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.